Trump and Putin now on a collision course. Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, it's now the biggest story in the world. Relations now between Russian strongman Vladimir Putin and, of course, U.S. President Donald Trump are now fraying. They are starting to deteriorate and, frankly, deteriorate very, very quickly. There is now a war of words taking place between Trump and Vlad. And it's getting bad. It's getting very, very bad. Here is now the situation. Over the last 3 or 4 days, now remember, the context is everything. We are supposed to be in the midst of peace talks and peace negotiations. Ukraine and Ukrainian negotiators, Russian negotiators met face to face. Trump has been working the phones. In fact, he spoke to Putin directly recently and for about, 2 hours. Speaking as well with Ukrainian leader Zelensky for about another 45 minutes. So the three of them are on the phone. The negotiators are going face to face. We are supposed to be in the midst of peace talks and peace negotiations for a ceasefire and an eventual end and resolution to the war. Instead, over the last 3 to 4 days, Vladimir Putin now is preparing a massive spring-summer offensive that he believes will lead to the Russian army breaking out of eastern Ukraine and delivering a devastating blow to Kiev and to Ukrainian forces, effectively winning the war. And so, to lay the groundwork for this massive spring-summer offensive, over the last 3 to 4 days, Russian forces have launched the largest, biggest missile drone strikes, not just on the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, but on over 30 cities and villages across the entire country. Devastating strikes. Civilians have been slaughtered. Ukrainian military positions are getting pounded. And so, in the midst now of this dramatic escalation of the war between Putin and Ukraine, Trump now went on social media and exploded, saying that Putin has gone, quote unquote, absolutely crazy, that he has lost his mind, that he clearly doesn't want peace, that he is firing rockets, missiles, drones into Ukrainian cities, slaughtering people, slaughtering civilians. And as Trump said, what the hell is going on here? On the phone, we're talking peace, and in reality, he's waging war. On the Ukrainian side, Zelensky went for broke. He then told his people that Putin's days, quote unquote, are numbered, and that he will not be living for a while. He will not be living for a long time. That he's going to have a short lifespan. And guess what? There was an assassination attempt on Putin when he was in a helicopter. The Ukrainian drones and Ukrainian missiles sought to take down Putin's helicopter, almost killing the Russian president. And so what is now clear is that both sides do not want a peace deal. They want this war to go on. Russia believes it needs one final push, and they will break the back of the Ukrainian resistance, break the back of the Ukrainian army, and that Putin now will then be the decisive winner and then can determine peace terms from a position of absolute strength and victory. Zelensky, on the other hand, does not want to cede an inch of Ukrainian territory and believes, and maybe rightly, that Trump is getting sour on Putin and that Trump now may swing his support behind the Ukrainians and Zelensky, arm them to the teeth, and Ukraine now can start to take back much of the land that Russia has taken. In the midst of all of this, Trump now is exasperated, he is angry, he is frustrated, and now he is starting to blame Vladimir Putin. Listen now, this was Sunday, couple nights ago, at an airport in New Jersey, and Trump was not happy. Russia now had just unleashed a massive wave of missile and drone attacks, pounding the capital, pounding cities all over Ukraine. Trump felt burned by Putin. Listen to him saying he's not happy and Putin's going to hear from him. Roll cut one, a mic.
Can you provide us an update on Russia and Ukraine as well?
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
And he was even stronger on social media, basically saying that Putin has lost his mind, that he's, quote, absolutely crazy, totally, absolutely crazy. Now, the Russians have responded. They now say that Trump has got emotional overload, that he's becoming too emotional, and they're dismissing Trump as basically throwing a tantrum. Trump now has turned around and said, look, Russia is now, his words, playing with fire. That Putin now wants all of Ukraine, and that if he tries to go for all of Ukraine, this will lead to the quote-unquote downfall of Russia. That Putin's regime will collapse, Russia will lose the war, and this will be devastating for Russia, Russia's economy, Russia's society, Russia's political leadership. Trump now, the Russians now have retaliated, saying that they now believe that Trump is blowing smoke, that he is reacting overly emotional, and according now to what the Kremlin is now saying, they are not taking Trump seriously, that Putin now is going to conduct the war the way it needs to be conducted. So, you now have a collision course taking place. There's no question. As I speak to you now, Trump has now given the order for U.S. forces to begin beefing up in Northern Europe, the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, the Baltic states. There are now war exercises taking place. There is now a sense in Europe that things could dramatically escalate between NATO and Russia as the war now in Ukraine intensifies, as Trump is now calling for a military buildup in Northern Europe, and as he now is warning Putin to be very careful. Listen now to Trump saying, I'm shocked. All I heard from Putin on the phone was, I want a deal, I want an exit ramp, I want to end this war. And now, all of a sudden, he's dramatically expanded and intensified the war. Roll cut. And by the way, I don't know who the reporter is. I don't know if it's ABC News or NBC, but he's mad. So he's attacking the reporter for being fake news. Roll cut 1A, Mike.
Mr. President, what do you want to do about that?
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised. We'll see what we're going to do. What am I going to tell you? You're the fake news, aren't you? You're totally fake. All right, any other questions? I don't like what Putin is doing, not even a little bit. He's killing people. And something happened to this guy, and I don't like it.
Now, liberals in the media are mocking Trump, saying, well, you know, the Russians have been killing people since the war began. And obviously Trump's point is, yeah, we know that. As Trump's been pointing out, 5,000 soldiers a week are being slaughtered on both sides. And never mind the civilian death toll, which continues to pile up. But I thought we were in the midst of peace talks. So here we are in the midst of peace negotiations to try to end the war, while in reality, neither of you, and especially the Russians now, you and Putin, you guys are looking at this as an opportunity to escalate the war, to expand and increase the war. And so Trump feels humiliated by Putin, slapped in the face by Putin, strung along and played for a fool by Putin. So what is now Trump weighing? What is he now planning to do? Outside now of increasing these war exercise games, these war games in Northern Europe and in the Baltic states, which is a clear signal to Russia, he now is weighing devastating, crippling sanctions, specifically on Russian oil and natural gas. And the strategy is very simple. They want to cut Russia off economically at the knees. Russia's entire economy and its entire war economy depends upon money and revenue coming in from the sale of oil. Trump now wants to drive the price of gas, the price of oil, down to less than $55 a barrel. If he gets it under $55 a barrel, the Russians can no longer sustain financially, economically, their war. And so Trump is now warning Putin, I will economically nuke you if you continue on this path. Yo, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, big decision now. President Trump is at a crossroads in his foreign policy, and he knows it. His team knows it. What to do with Russia, what to do with Ukraine, what to do with the war. Listen now to President Trump. This is Sunday night now. He was caught surprised. He had a lot on his plate, obviously. He had not heard that Zelensky had launched a devastating drone strike on Putin's helicopter, whereby they almost assassinated Vladimir Putin. Trump was, whoa, he was taken aback. So, again, look at it from his point of view. Zelensky's telling him, with one side of his mouth, he wants peace. The other side of his mouth, he's ordering the assassination of Putin, which, if they're successful, would unleash fury from the Russians. They may even go nuclear, who knows? But it would unleash a furious, savage response in the wake of Putin being assassinated. And he's dealing with Putin, who with one side of his mouth is telling him, I want peace, 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 Donald. And on the other side of his mouth, some of the most, in fact, the largest, most devastating drone missile strikes in the 3 years of the war. So he's dealing with both sides that just want to go at each other's throats, literally kill each other, while they're telling him they want a peace deal. Roll cut 1B, Mike.
A Russian commander reportedly said that Putin was almost caught in the middle of a drone attack from Ukraine. So do you have any...
I haven't heard that, but maybe that would be a reason. I don't know, but I have not heard that.
So basically, like, in other words, it's getting worse and worse. The situation is not getting better. It's getting worse. It's declining. It's deteriorating. And you can tell now, Trump is very close to turning the page on the whole thing. Number one, it looks like he's done with Putin. I want you to listen now to Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. Says, I've been talking to President Trump. We've talked about Russia. We've talked about Putin. I know Trump. I know his personality and temperament. This is what Senator Mark Wayne Mullen was saying. When he's done with you, when he's turned the page, he's turned the page. He doesn't trust Putin anymore. And worst of all, he believes that Putin has been playing him the whole time. Roll cut 3, Mike.
The president has been very patient with Putin, and I get it. The reason why he did. I mean, we saw how much patience Reagan had with Gorbachev. At the same time, he's trying to clean up a mess that he didn't start. Right? I mean, this war would have never taken place if Trump would have been in office. But now it is. He's been very clear, Sean, from day one. He wanted the killing to stop. He's tried to work with Putin. His patience is running thin, and you and I know President Trump personally. When he's done with you, he's done.
And it looks like he may be done. So this is now the latest from the White House. The President Trump now is talking with his national security team. He is very close to coming to a final decision. The decision would be this: to impose 500% tariffs on all Russian oil and natural gas, and any country that does business with Russia that buys its oil and natural gas or sends them money in exchange for oil and natural gas. So what he's going to do is he's going to economically cripple the lifeline of the Russian economy, which is oil and gas. Trump also now says he's making calls to Saudi Arabia, to Riyadh in particular, leverage that relationship, and he's going to tell the Saudis, I want you now to really kickstart your production of oil. Jumpstart your production of oil. We are going to drive the price of a barrel of oil all the way down to under $55. Now, why 55? Anything under 55, the Russians don't make money on. So literally, they are going to financially starve, choke the Russian war economy. Now, most analysts say Russia, if this is actually implemented, the Russians will no longer be able to fight in about 6 months. That the Russian economy will teeter and then it will outright collapse. So Putin is now looking at a 6-month window, should this happen, to win the war. If he doesn't win the war, this may be like Germany in World War I, not World War II, World War I, where in 1918 they went for broke. Massive offensive. They were on a war economy. They were being blockaded, and they went for their final all-out push. And when that didn't materialize, they had no choice but to sign terms of surrender. Putin now this is a very high-risk gambit on his part. And I believe that Putin now may have miscalculated Trump, thinking that Trump would just go along to get along, that he so wanted a deal at any cost, at any price, in the search for a Nobel Peace Prize, that he'd look the other way as Putin continued to pound Ukrainian cities and Ukrainian military positions. If Trump pulls the proverbial trigger on these massive sanctions, Russia's economy and its ability to wage war is finished. Listen now. Hold on, I don't think I have time. Do I? Yes, I do. Listen to Mark Wayne Mullen on Fox saying Zelensky may turn out to be the winner in this. Trump may arm Ukraine to the teeth and cripple Russia's economy, and then Putin is in big trouble. Roll cut 3A, Mike.
And if Putin continues to push this envelope the way that he is, he's going to give Zelensky the tools he needs to fight back on the full scale and full support of the United States. But Europe needs to take a lead. This isn't our fight. This isn't in our backyard. This is Europe's backyard. However, President Trump has made it very clear, Sean, that he wants the killing to stop. And he was very clear in his statement a while ago.
Now, what is clear to me, and I'd love for you to weigh in, Kuhner Country, 617-266-6868. It's very clear to me now. Trump is a hero. There's no question. This was not his war. This was Biden's war. This is Putin's war, Zelensky's war. And he has done everything possible to try to bring about peace. But both sides don't want a peace deal. And you can't force two sides to peace if they don't want peace. WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me ask all of you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Will Trump walk away from the Russia-Ukraine peace negotiations? From the whole war? Will Trump essentially, will he just wash his hands and walk away? A, yes, B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in National ER. You can also vote via X. Again, last night I was very active on X. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, KUHN as in National ER. I'd be, if I was voting, probably be going A. Not probably, I would be voting A. I think he is going to wash his hands. We shall see, obviously. The next 24 to 48 hours are going to be absolutely pivotal. He will make a decision on sanctions on Russia, most likely by the end of this week. People are saying Friday. A lot of his aides are saying expect something on Friday. Once he goes down the road of these crippling, devastating sanctions and driving down the international price of oil and gas, he is going to cut Putin off economically at the knees. And there'll be no going back. He will turn his back and then basically tell the Russians and the Ukrainians, you guys can fight it out. Now, here is my recommendation. This is my take, and then I want to go straight to the phone lines. 617-266-6868 is the number. As I said before the break, but it bears repeating, there is no shame or dishonor in being a man of peace, as Trump has been a man of peace, and done everything humanly possible to try to get two sides together to save lives and end this devastating war, the worst war in Europe since World War II. But it takes two to tango. In this case, three to tango. You have to have two sides that are willing to have peace, that are willing to end the bloodshed and the fighting. What is clear now, Putin believes he can deliver a knockout blow. Ukraine does not want to cede even a centimeter of territory, or at least its leadership. Zelensky does not want to cede a centimeter of territory. Zelensky, by attempting to assassinate Putin, Zelensky made it very clear he wants this war to go on, if anything, to expand and escalate the war. Putin, the drones and the missile strikes speak for themselves. He now believes that the Ukrainian army is now fracturing, breaking, that morale is low. He has built up his army now for a huge assault, and he believes this is the final assault that will deliver him ultimate victory in Ukraine. So both sides, I believe, have been playing Trump the whole time. And he's now come to the realization that they were never serious about peace. And so my advice to the president, very simple. Impose these crippling sanctions on Russia. Putin needs to pay for what he's done to our president. If you weren't interested in peace, you should have said it from the beginning. But instead, you strung us along, you strung Trump along. And you think you can mock him and humiliate him and make fun of him and not pay a price? No. Enough is enough. So, impose these devastating sanctions, drive down the price of oil, and let's see how far Russia can fight now with its war economy starving for revenue. And as for Ukraine and Zelensky, that big mouth, who just can't seem to shut up, and always sticking it to Trump. In fact, he just did it again. I mean, just to show you, I'm sorry, I said this to Sandy yesterday, and we were talking about this. How dumb is this guy? When you've got the President of the United States, the leader of the free world, the leader of the world's greatest superpower, now in a war of words with Vladimir Putin and the Russians. Just shut up. Shut up. Instead, no, Zelensky, the Churchill of our time, the egomaniac, that crook, has to go on social media and say, American silence is causing this problem now. You see, the missile attacks is because America was silent against Putin. You embolden Putin, Trump, by being silent about Putin and his aggression for the last several weeks. So basically, he's attacking Trump, saying, you see, by not being harder on Putin, harsher, tougher, you almost, in a sense, brought this attack on Ukraine. And Trump responded on social media, literally saying, shut your mouth. Everything that comes out of your mouth, as he put it, causes problems. Like, just shut up. Now, I'm telling you, if I'm the president of Ukraine, I'm the leader of Ukraine, and the eastern part of my country now is completely occupied, and I've got almost 1 million people dead, and 10 million refugees, and the infrastructure of my country blown to pieces, and my boys who are fighting on the front lines are on the verge of collapse and defeat and are being slaughtered, 5,000 dead a week. Shut up. Shut up. All you say is, I love America. That's all you say. On the phone with whatever you say, Donald. I agree with you, Donald. Yes, Putin bad. Yes, Putin aggressor. Yes, Putin is crazy. Yes. What you want to do, Mr. President? I love America. I love America. Please, Donald, come to Kiev. We have excellent pierogies and the vodka. I'm telling you, better than Russian vodka. Volodymyr, I don't drink. I drink for you, Donald. Okay? I drink for you. That's all you have to say. You're his friend. You're his buddy. Whatever you say, Donald, I'm in your camp, Donald. You know, if you want, privately on the phone. Now you know what we're dealing with, Donald. I've been trying to tell you. Guy's crazy. What you want to do, Donald? That's all you have to say. But no, Mr. Egomaniac. No, this is what happens when you deify a clown like this. No, he thinks he's got a way in. Trump, you to blame too for what's happening now. I'm done with Zelensky. I'm done with Putin. I'm done with all of them. Impose the sanctions, and you tell the Russians and the Ukrainians, you guys are now on your own. Wash your hands. If you can't hear me, I'm doing the motion with my hands where you wash them. Both sides don't want peace. Address the world. Address the American people and address the world. And Trump should come out and say, I was the peacemaker. Putin wants war. Zelensky wants war. It's not my war. It wouldn't have started if I was president. It was Biden, that bumbling buffoon. But it's their mess. And if they want to continue to fight and die, if they want to throw away the cream of their youth, if they want to keep destroying their countries in this war of attrition, guys, don't look at me. I did everything I could. Impose sanctions on the Russians and walk away. It's time to walk away and let them fight it out. Agree, disagree. What should President Trump do? Should he impose sanctions on Russia? And is it time you walk away from the peace talks and this war altogether? On the great WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, Trump and Putin now are clearly on a collision course. A war of words has erupted. My question now to you. Is this the end of any possibility of peace between Russia and Ukraine? And is now Trump and our United States and Russia, are we now going to return to essentially a new Cold War? And what should Trump do? Should he walk away? Should he not impose sanctions on Russia? Should he continue to try to hammer out some kind of a peace deal? Or is it time to call it quits? 617-266-6868. Larry in Leominster. You're going to kick us off, Larry. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. There is so much to unpack. So, starting off with Zelensky, when you take a shot at the king, don't miss.
Larry?
Yeah.
Oh, keep going.
Yeah.
I was nodding like, yeah, I agree.
On purpose. Yeah, Now,
in other words, Larry, his attempt to kill Putin, if you're going to kill Putin, you better get him. Because now, Putin is on a rampage. Please, keep going, Larry.
Second time they attempted to kill him. Do you remember the limousine?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is not the first attempt. First failed attempt. So, you hit on it, but not in depth enough, in my opinion. You're describing how Trump didn't start this war, Biden did, so he was behind the eight ball to start with. It's worse than that when you think about it. Since 2015, what has been the mantra with Trump and Russia?
Well, that he's been colluding with Putin, that he's a secret agent of Putin, that he's a poodle of Putin. That's been the liberal line for the last 10 years.
To the masses, it's like they're trying to portray him as just weak and ineffective against Putin. But it's more nefarious than that, in my opinion. They think that Trump is a hothead, Democrats and the media, and that if they keep pushing him, saying that he's just a poodle to Putin, he'll lash out. Oh, yeah, I'll show you. Right? So he's got all this stacked against him. And then you got the two of them. They're like spoiled, rotten little kids, both of them. Right? Constantly bickering, constantly fighting at each other. Even after you put them in timeout, they go back at it again and again.
Oh, you're talking about Putin and Zelensky now, right?
Sorry. Yes, sorry. Yeah. And it's just like, you're right. He's the frustrated father ready to throw his hands up in frustration and just walk away. What I would recommend, he's in a tough spot because he campaigned on ending the endless funding to Ukraine. So arming Zelensky and the Ukrainians to the teeth right now, I don't think is a good idea. But I do think you're right. He needs to walk away. He's like, I tried. You guys want to kill each other? Kill each other. What Americans don't realize is it's, even though, Europeans, predominantly white, what have you, they're a whole different culture. This is year 3 of this war. What has all that death and all that fighting gotten Putin? As far as strategically, like landmass, what's it gotten him?
It's gotten him really the Donbass. That's it.
That's it. Very little. And compared to what he had before the war, not a lot. Now, in Russia's eyes, if he ends the war and that's all he's accomplished, he's done. And I'm not saying it's justified in any way, but right now he's trying to save face and he's trying to make this last push because he knows Trump is not going to tolerate this for much longer. And he's trying to get more ground so he can go back to his people and says, I did this for you. These are my accomplishments. Because if he goes back and says, we're no better off than when we started this 3 years ago, he's toast.
Oh, they'll hang him. They'll hang him right there in Red Square. You're right. They'll hang him right there on the spot. See, that's the pressure. You nailed it, Larry. That's the pressure Putin. I agree with you. It's what he's doing is savage. It's criminal. What he's doing, especially the way he's just the random attacks on civilians. It's a slaughter now. So I'm not justifying it in any way, but to understand where he's coming from, he's like, I can't go back to my people with this. This is nothing. My own nationalists will turn on me. So that's why he's got to deliver a decisive victory, gain a lot more territory, break Zelensky, break the government in Kiev. So that's his strategy. Zelensky now, he just wants to hang on. He thinks the longer, now Zelensky's thinking, all we got to do now is dig in, because the Europeans now are going to give us a lot of aid, and maybe even Trump now is going to arm us to the teeth, and he's going to impose these crippling sanctions. So if we're just willing to throw bodies, we can wait the Russians out. And remember, Larry, you know this better than even I do. Zelensky's a crook. You know, Zelensky's not thinking about the interests of his people or Ukraine. He's got a lot of money that he's stolen. So he's going to be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life. He needs the gravy train to continue. And he's got to settle this war on favorable terms, or else his own people are going to go after him. So Trump is caught in the middle of this. My question to you, Larry, is this double barrel question. Should Trump arm the Ukrainians? You pretty much answered that. You're saying, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't continue Biden's policy. America first. Walk away. Should he impose sanctions on Russia? Or should he just say, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm not giving Ukraine any more money or any more weapons. I'm not going to sanction the Russians. I'm just walking away. So there's a policy mix here that Trump is going to have to decide on. What should he do, Larry? Should he sanction Russia? And should he arm the Ukrainians? Or should he not arm the Ukrainians and sanction Russia? Or should he not sanction Russia and not arm the Ukrainians? Or not sanction Russia and arm the Ukrainians? What should Trump do now?
Well, Jeff, thank you. This is a matter of splitting the baby, in my opinion. Okay. First of all, no, do not arm or continue to arm the Ukrainians, because we're not technically arming them. We're giving them money for the fund so they can buy it, and they're stealing the money. Here's a quick analogy. If you take a 16-year-old kid and you stick him in the best race car in NASCAR, how do you think he would do?
Horrible.
Horrible. They're running out of people. Have you seen the videos where they are kidnapping young kids, young people off the street and conscripting them into the military?
Yeah, it's horrific.
They're up against the wall. They don't have the people to fight anymore. That's their main problem. They're running out of bodies, literally. They don't have anyone to fight their war. Zelensky is praying that Putin does something stupid and drags in NATO into the war with fresh bodies that know what they're doing. That's what he's holding, in my opinion. That's what he's holding out for. On the flip side of that, slap the harshest, toughest sanctions on Russia. And what Trump is very good at that no other president has been able to do, he can go to other nations, because they know he's not kidding. They said, if you do business with him, you're done. You're done with America. I'll keep you out of our country financially, population-wise. Don't do it. And they know he means business. So it's split. Don't continue funding this, because one, he ran on that we're not going to fund this crap anymore. Two, hurt him financially, hurt him everything short of dropping a nuclear bomb on that man's head. And because the one thing I am proud of him for doing is he has not gone back to first term where he would lash out because it may sound harsh to say manhood has been tested, but all that goading has been on purpose, calling him a poodle, calling him his puppet and stuff, hoping he would start a war with Putin to say, look, I can stand up to him. Trump's being smart, and he's threatening economic sanctions, not war sanctions. And that's what we need to continue doing tenfold.
Larry, great call. Honestly, great call. Great call. Larry, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. 617. I think Larry hit the nail on the head. You may agree or disagree, but I think he nailed it. Don't give Zelensky another dime. Don't give that crook any more money. And I think Larry's right. Zelensky wants, and the media, the liberals in this country, whether it be the media, the Democrats, the neoconservatives, the war hawks, they want a U.S.-led NATO war against Russia. That's what they want. They realize Ukraine cannot, Rubio himself said it. He goes, Ukraine cannot win this war. He said that's the problem. Putin wants something that doesn't belong to him, i.e. Ukraine, and Ukraine wants something it can't get, which is its territory back, or much of its territory back. And so Ukraine can't win this war. On its own, they can't. Everybody knows it. But the United States leading NATO, that's a different story. But that's World War III. And so this way, by hitting Russia economically, I mean, just a body blow that I don't think the Russian war economy, frankly, can recover from, then you've really stuck it to the Russians and to Vladimir Putin. And I would say, hit them with the sanctions, but both, and say, no more peace talks. Bye. Okay, you guys want to go at it? Go at it. That's it. Don't look at me. I'm the adult. You guys are the children. You guys want to continue fighting it out? Fight it out. Remember, I offered you peace. And then just walk away. Anyway, what say you? Agree, disagree? Let's go to Kay in Rockland. Thanks for holding, Kay, and welcome.
Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I believe we should go against both Russia and Ukraine and give them the strongest and end it sanctions that we can and just stop it. Zelensky, both he and Putin, they are like 2-year-old bully boys, but they're adults, and they're never going to stop. You can give them the world. They're not going to stop. Why should we put what Zelensky wants is for us to put our boots, our military people on the ground, and let us fight their war. Should never happen. It becomes political. This is a political thing. Neither one of these two men think about the people living in their countries. They don't care. This is a fight between two bullies. Sanction them and stop it. We don't need them, but we need to make sure that our military is ready for the next step, which could happen with Russia and their ballistics. So that's how I feel about it. Strong sanctions and stop it. We were in Vietnam, and to stop the spread of communism and what it turned into, a political game. 58,000 people died. We offered, Yasser Arafat came to our country, to Camp David, with President Clinton at the time, and he was offered, 95, 98% of what he wanted. He said no. I call him a dish rag. And it's still going on over there. Let Israel, who is our ally, do what they need to do to stop this, because Palestine, Hamas, they're never going to stop either until it's ended.
Kay, what do you, I agree with you, but let me just play devil's advocate for a second, because you're obviously a very intelligent woman. Let me ask you this, Kay. What do you say to the argument, why sanction Russia? I mean, there is an argument now that many Trump support, I don't subscribe to it, you know that, but that many Trump supporters are saying, well, why sanction the Russians? We're not at war with Russia. Yes, okay, Putin did play Trump. They were talking peace. And instead, Putin is obviously getting ready for a massive offensive. He thinks he can win this war. Outside of embarrassing Trump, outside of wasting his time, playing him, stringing him along, which is diplomatically humiliating, no question. But, he didn't shoot him. He didn't try to assassinate him. He hasn't declared war on America. He's not shooting at Americans, or, in other words, he hasn't concretely done anything to us. Once you go down the road of these massive, devastating sanctions, it's essentially a declaration of economic war on Russia. And that this will infuriate the Kremlin even more and drive it even more into the hands of China. That what the United States should just do is just walk away. Don't do anything. Just walk away. No sanctions on the Russians. Don't give the Ukrainians any more aid. Just walk away. The whole thing. Wash your hands, walk away. No sanctions on the Ruskies. What say you, Kay?
President Trump does nothing to Russia. My feeling is we're a civilized people. We still have, we still believe in humanity. But to what extent? To the extent that we need to have our men and women over there fighting a war that is not our war. It will become our war if we do put boots over there. It's bad enough we're giving them Zelensky all this money into his pockets. It's not going to the people. It's not helping fight the war and our military equipment. It's not going to stop because the two bullies have decided that they're putting their feet are on the ground and they're going to stand their position. If we don't do sanctions against Russia, he's going to get Ukraine and he's going to go further. So if we do sanctions, and not only that, but the people of the United States will be going after damn you do, damn you don't, President Trump. They're going to say that he's a weak president.
Well, and that he lost Ukraine. No, you nailed it, Kay. Should Russia win this war, I mean, I don't mean get the East. I'm talking about, Ukraine collapses, right? Putin wins. I mean, decisive victory. Then they're going to say Trump lost Ukraine the way Biden lost Afghanistan. And they're going to turn it, whether he likes it or not, they're going to blame Trump. This way, if he cripples the Russian economy, and says, okay, no one put tougher sanctions than I did, then no matter what happens on the battlefield, Trump can say, look, I did what I could. I don't know what else to tell you. Kay, thank you very much for that call. Good call. 617-26, again, agree, disagree, 617-266-6868 is the number. To me, as a matter of principle, you don't play the president for a fool. These were international peace talks. These were conversations that, yes, were private, but were widely reported on by the entire world media. Everybody wants this war to end. Putin made a big thing about how he wanted peace and how he respected Trump and Trump could be the deal maker. And he was willing to, meet even with Zelensky face to face, according to what Putin said. And that's why Trump is so furious. And you do this. So you have me telling everybody we're close. Remember, just a week ago, he said, I think we're close to a deal. Literally, 1 week ago, Wednesday, last week, he said, we're very close to a deal. And that's when he went nuts and said, and over the weekend, you launched the biggest missile drone strikes of the entire war. And you've got dead, I mean, I'm not playing the children card, but you've got dead kids, women, children, all elderly, civilians, cities all over Ukraine are in rubble. I mean, you're pounding them into the Stone Age while we're in the midst of negotiations. And Zelensky, you're trying to kill him in a helicopter? Like, this is what you guys, both of you, this is your idea of peace. And you could tell Trump, he's exasperated. Now, he said this in public. He said, you don't know what it's like dealing with these two. He goes, I'm on the phone with Putin. He can't stand Zelensky. All it is it's a hate fest against Zelensky. I'm on the phone with Zelensky. It's a hate fest against Putin. And he goes, I'm on the phone saying, guys, can we get a deal? Like, I want peace. What will it take for you to end this war? And they just hate each other. It's like blind, hatred is blind. It's blinding. They're blind now with hatred. And they don't care now how many of their own people they sacrifice. Well, I don't care who you are. You can't make peace if the two leaders of these two countries hate each other that much. And I'll be, again, let me bare my soul to you like I'm in the confessional. 3 years of war is not enough. What is it, 1 million dead now if you count all the civilians? Not just the soldiers, but the civilians? And, whatever, 1 million dead and wounded. That is definitely 1 million. So you look at how many are maimed, wounded, dead. 1 million is not enough. And in the end, over what? I mean, I understand NATO and the red line. I get it. But Trump forced Zelensky to make that concession. Ukraine has said now, we will not be a part of NATO. And Trump is willing to push Ukraine hard on demilitarization. So he's willing to meet many of Putin's initial demands. But I think it goes back to Larry's point. Putin is going to after 3 years of fighting and so many Russian mothers grieving their dead sons, he can't come back with just a slice of eastern Ukraine. They're going to say that all of this for that? Are you serious? And they're going to overthrow Putin. They're going to hang him. And he knows that. That's why he's got to keep fighting. Anyway, just my opinion. Russ in Boston. Thanks for holding, Russ. And as always, welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. First of all, it's time for the Russian people to assassinate Putin before he brings the Russian people into a black hole. Putin was offered a great deal to stop the war. It's time to strangle the Russian economy. It's time to let Ukraine bomb Russia at will, reinforce all NATO Eastern Europe positions. Thank God we have a great leader, a man of peace, at the same time a great commander-in-chief. To all the evil dictators and the warmongers, President Trump is no Lyndon Johnson, he's no Jimmy Carter, and he's no Joe Biden. Believe with us, and you will regret it, Jeff. Now, I disagree with one thing with a previous caller, okay? Now, remember, the rotten Democratic Party and Joe Biden set the stage to hate Russia and Putin, and they interfered in our election and all this other...
Russ, please hang on. I really want you to get that point out. I'm up against a hard break. I'm going to come back to Russ. We are now at a fundamental watershed, at a fork in the road. What should Trump do regarding Putin? What should he do regarding the war in Ukraine? RKO, Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. Okay, we're going to go right back to Russ in Boston, but before we do, Wednesday, it's about 7:20-ish. You know what that means. Truth or troll? Take it away, Mike.
And now, America's favorite game show, where you get to decide on the Kuhner Report. This is Truth or Troll.
Today's entry for Truth or Troll comes from President Trump speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, where he's interrupted by incessant phone calls.
Cars. We want to make cars. We don't want to have, and I like Canada very much, but we don't want to have Canada making our cars. We want to make our cars. Oh, it's a phone call. Do you mind? Hello? Okay, it's only a congressman. I'd let you know, actually.
Mr. President, are you considering stopping other universities from taking foreign students?
It's a different congressman. They're all congratulating us. Is that a sponsor? Yeah, it's lucky it is. Right? Okay, let's go.
So what do you think, Jeff? Do you think those were actual congressmen calling him? Or do you think it was somebody else and he just didn't want to say who it was? So I'll just say it's a congressman.
No, I don't think it was a congressman. I just find it funny. It's only a congressman. I don't need to pick that up. I think he was trolling. Personally, I think he was trolling. But Mike, well, let me ask you. What do you think? You think he was trolling, or you think that really was a congressman on the phone?
See, I'm not really sure, because if you think about it, I mean, it could be, because that was just after they passed this big beautiful bill, so it could be them saying congratulations. But also, I feel like it would be totally him, where if it's not, why would he tell everybody else who it actually was? Exactly.
Truth or troll? Let me ask all of you. Do you think A, truth? Do you think there really was some member of Congress calling to congratulate him? Or B, you think he's just having a little bit of fun? Who knows? It could have been a world leader or someone on his national security staff. He didn't want people to know. And, oh, yeah, that's just it's only a congressman. I don't need to pick that up. A, truth. B, troll. You can vote on our webpage, WRKO.com/Kuhner. WRKO.com/Kuhner. KUH. N is in national ER. You can also vote via X. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, KUH, N is in national ER. Okay, Russ, let's go right back to you. You were saying just before the break, Trump now has got to teach Putin a lesson. Otherwise, Putin is going to drive Russia right into the ground, into maybe a catastrophic defeat in Ukraine. And who knows, the economy may just shatter now under his leadership, and that Trump now needs to send a message loud and clear and impose crippling powerful, devastating sanctions. However, you said there was one thing you disagreed with the previous caller. Please, Russ, pick up where you left off.
Okay, as I said, Putin was offered a great deal to stop the war, okay? First of all, number one, this filthy, rotten Democratic Party and Joe Biden were villainizing the Russians for several years. They're involved in our elections and everything else. They were creating hatred towards the Russians, without question, all right? And basically, at the same time, they were foaming at the mouth about Ukraine possibly joining NATO, okay? And they actually led Zelensky to think that they could actually join NATO, okay? So what did the Russians do? They said, screw you, you're not going to join NATO. So they invaded Ukraine, okay? So now, the Russians, let's put it this way, they have Crimea. They've got the Donbass, okay? They've got 20% of Ukraine's soil. Plus, they got a deal that Ukraine will not join NATO. The Russians got what they wanted, okay? So they should have taken the deal. But I'll tell you, Putin, which truthfully, Jeff, I was on his side originally because I felt that they forced him to do what he did, okay? But now I've taken a 180 with that SOB. He's an evil warmonger that he must be stopped, Jeff, without question, okay? And remember one thing. Remember the World War II. Remember World War I, okay? Those that side in with the United States of America will have ultimate victory. And this goes for the Chinese communists, that little son of a SOB in Korea, and Hamas, Iran, and Russia. You will lose if you fight a war with the United States.
Amen. No, Russ, I think you nailed it. I think Putin overplayed his hand. I think he's getting greedy. You're right. Look, objectively, he can turn, say, look, I got Crimea, and I've got the Americans to recognize Crimea, which is big. I've got eastern Ukraine, the Donbass, and I've got Ukraine. They're not going to be in NATO. We've achieved every objective that we wanted. And there's your exit ramp. Peace with honor. You can end the war. But his generals are telling him, you're dead on, Russ. No. We can take out Zelensky. We can capture the capital. We can take Kiev. This is it. The Ukrainian army is breaking. It's splintering. They're weak. They're demoralized. They can't even, get enough people, conscripts, to fight the war on the Eastern Front. Putin just took 3 villages. It's slow. It's grinding. It's like World War I. It's a war of attrition. But Putin sees the direction's going one way. It's going his way. And I think you're right, Russ. He got greedy. And now now he's clearly the warmonger. Whatever, you may have disagreed with him in the past and opposed the invasion. But I'm saying now, well, you got what you wanted and you're still pushing? You're greedy, man. You're greedy. And I think Trump's going to hammer him with sanctions. And I don't think Putin realizes how serious Trump is. Russ, as always, thank you for that call. 617-266-6868. George in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, George, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, George.
I think Trump's in a no-win situation. I agree with this shuttle diplomacy and economic warfare as opposed to kinetic. And I think that the thing that's missing from the equation, it was kind of hit with the other callers, is that you have to give Putin a way out. And then the only way I can justify it in my mind is you have to pull Zelensky. He's not even really their legal leader at this point. So he needs to go. And just, I know this is how the evolution or the genesis of how this all started was when we started toying with individual states and leaders and all that and puppet governments and so forth. But I think that would be the good compromise. And just hit them hard economically, but find another face for the Ukrainians, and I think that would speed it up.
George, I'm up against a break. Can you hang on? I want to come back to you because I think you're throwing a really interesting twist into all this. Is the price for Putin Zelensky has to go? And if Trump says to him, okay, final offer, basically elections. I'm going to hold elections in Ukraine. Zelensky will lose those elections. Is that the deal?
Can you provide us an update on Russia and Ukraine as well?
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
So that was President Trump, and it's just actually on social media, it's gotten much worse. He's calling Putin now a lunatic, a crazy man, absolutely crazy. He says now that he's a warmonger. Putin is now lashing out as well, saying that Trump has become overly emotional, almost unhinged, and that the Russian leader now says that there will be no peace negotiations, that peace talks have now completely broken down. And now the Russian media is openly mocking and making fun of Trump. It is now obvious they are now on a collision course. And my question to you, Trump now is seriously weighing imposing very harsh economic sanctions, especially on Russia's oil and natural gas. This would target the lifeline of the Russian economy, making its war economy almost unable to sustain itself. They could survive maybe 3-4 months, but not 6, 8, 9 months. This could literally bring Russia to its knees. Should Trump impose these devastating sanctions? Let's go back to George in New Hampshire. George, you were making some very good points that Putin was initially backed into a corner with the coup where they overthrew a pro-Russian president in Ukraine. Then they pushed NATO right onto his doorstep. And now, however, Putin may need more. And maybe the cost of ending this war is to have Zelensky step down or resign. He's already passed his mandate. He's technically now a dictator. He's no longer an elected Democrat, small d. He's a dictator who has now gone beyond his term. He's declared martial law in Ukraine. And maybe the price for peace is that Zelensky steps down. Am I misstating your position, or did I state it accurately, George?
Yeah, accurately. I mean, I think the key for Trump to navigate this situation is de-escalation, and it's obvious that with Zelensky, Zelensky is an antagonist, and he has his own interests. He doesn't have the interest in the country, in my opinion, of Ukraine. So I would, by one of the de-escalating tactics I would do would be to replace Zelensky, put a new face on it, someone that represents Trump's perspective, but also has a foot in Ukraine. I don't know if you. I think defunding weaponry would be probably one of the things I would do, and then I would find a fallback line. I don't know if it's Kiev, the Dnieper River, I believe. Something on that level where it's just I mean, this is just such a, this is for the world. The world doesn't seem to recognize, the leaders don't want to recognize how dangerous this situation is. And this needs to be resolved. I like the economic version in terms of the oil because, like you said, it puts a time clock on how long Putin can really, function. Russia's going to win. We know that. So if you can put a stopwatch on it in say 3 to 6 months, that ends the war, and some negotiations are agreed on and kept. I mean, that's the other issue. I mean, that's a separate issue. But again, Russia's going to win. Trump's in a terrible position. The world's in jeopardy with the situation, and in the end, we need to be able to talk to Russia. We need to be able to work with Russia. We don't want to blow them up and be like a North Korean situation where, decades go by where you eventually take a phone call or a meeting with the leader of North Korea. This stuff has to happen rapid. I think that Trump has the skill set to navigate this, but he needs to be really clear in his mind and not go off with his mouth at times, because he has a tendency to do so, and he just needs to be really clear. De-escalation, less rhetoric. It's just necessary. I mean, the adults need to come to the room now.
I agree. No, George, on every point, I think you're making superb points. Let me just ask you this, because this is what got Trump very upset, which is, I'm sure privately, if you spoke to him, he goes, no, George, you're very sensible, very rational. Check. I agree. But he made a fool out of me. And he made a fool out of me. This is not an ego thing. He made a fool out of me on the international stage. I put my entire prestige and reputation, myself, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. I've got Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg shuttling back and forth to Ukraine, to Kiev. I've got Steve Witkoff going back and forth to Moscow. We set up these international peace talks in Turkey. And you're telling me you want peace. I'm telling the world you want peace. I'm vouching for you because you're giving me your word that you want peace. And all of a sudden now, you're launching these massive, devastating, brutal attacks all over the country. So, in other words, hey, buddy, you just played me for a fool. And you don't play the United States of America and the President of the United States of America for a fool. Now, that doesn't mean you go to war. It doesn't mean you get people killed. But Putin needs to pay a price for what he did. What say you, George?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know how you make him. Again, I mean, I think the objective is that this ends. I'm going to try to answer your question, but I mean, if I was the leader, this is how I would look at it. As a business owner, this is how I have to look at things when things get emotional when I'm dealing with business. I always have to check myself and say, this is a trap. I need to be unemotional, and I need to go for my objectives. And that's what matters in this situation. That's where he gets himself into trouble when he says too much. There's a point when, you can say too much, and less is more in the situation.
Say less. I hear you. Say less and hit him with these sanctions, and that'll speak for itself. Correct, George?
And same with the weaponry. In the end, Ukraine is not Ukraine of 2020 or 19. It'll never be the same. It'll take generations. It's 4 or 5 generations where they get even close to being repopulated. The Donbass, in terms of they were using depleted uranium shells. I don't even know if it's farmable. You know what I mean? I mean, they have some serious infrastructural, obviously from the war, but they also have a population issue. So I don't know how it plays out in the end for Ukraine. Will they always be a satellite? It's just basically, just a no man's land. It's just, this is the border of Ukraine, this is the border of Russia. It may be that, but I don't know. But I think in the end, everybody needs to look at the end goals and their objectives and what's best for the interest of them. And this chaos of this killing and this putting our world in jeopardy.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you're right. No, World War III. Look, to me, the national interest of the United States, the interest of Europe, the interest of Russia, the interest of Ukraine, and really the interest of the world. I think they all coincide. They all dovetail. Peace. This thing must end. The sooner, the better. George, I'm with you all the way. George, thank you very much for that. George, thank you very much for that call. Really thoughtful call. 617-266-6868. By the way, just so that you know, a lot of people don't know this. Ukraine literally means borderland. That's what Ukraine means, borderland. So even the name of the country defines in many ways its history, its culture, its ambiguous strategic location. It's a borderland of Europe. It's a borderland of the West. It's a borderland of Russia. It's a borderland of the Russian Empire. And that's why countries have always vied for influence. And in many ways, Ukraine has always been a satellite. Now it's a proxy between NATO and Russia. And it's a cat's paw. Everybody wants it for themselves. More with your calls next. 8:50 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends. Eric on Messenger says, Jeff, the key to this is simple. Remove Zelensky, economically starve Russia, and then you will see China's puppet, Putin, behave in a very different manner. In other words, if you get rid of Zelensky, probably through elections, say, okay, fine, part of the peace negotiation or the end of the final deal, the final agreement is Ukraine must hold very quick snap elections. Zelensky, I'm telling you, will lose. All the polls show he is deeply unpopular. He will not win. And so you can say to Putin, okay, you don't want to you wanted that clown gone. He's now gone. So how much more do you want? And maybe that's going to remove the final obstacle or the final hurdle to peace, along with sanctions on the Russian economy. Basically, Putin will have 6 months to win the war. And I don't think he's going to win the war in 6 months. And so by then, both sides will be so exhausted, they will be forced to make a deal. Agree, disagree. Bruce in Woburn. Thanks for holding, Bruce, and welcome. The moonbats are definitely howling, Bruce. No question about it. My friend, what do you make of all this? Now, Trump and Putin are, they don't like each other. They're now calling each other a lot of names, and the peace talks are off. What say you, Bruce?
I say, well, with the sanctions and everything, I believe in that, but I believe we should give nothing, not a bullet, not a missile, not a rocket to Ukraine. Get Zelensky out of there. And where the hell is Europe in all this, Jeff? What, they dump this on Trump? I blame Biden regime. I blame the Democrats. I blame the warmongers for all this crap that's going on. And, I mean, you know and I know this wouldn't be going on if Trump was in office. But then again, he'd be out of office now. And then what will we have? Warmongers taking over. And we saved the world back in World War II. We saved the world. And now who's coming to help us? And it's all about borders now. But what's the big gripe about borders? They didn't want us to have borders. They opened our borders. They flooded us. They ruined us. So now we got to save these guys? No. I don't believe for a second that Trump and Putin are enemies. No way, Jeff. He's a communist. But the world is full of communists. We got them right here. We got them in Congress. We got them in our own government. We got to root the world of communism one way or the other, Jeff, or the world is going to be going up in smoke.
Well, Bruce, look, when you put it like this, I go back to what I said years ago, and I don't think my fundamental calculus has changed. In the end, which flag flies over the Donbass, in eastern Ukraine, whether it's the Ukrainian blue and yellow trident or the Russian red, white, and blue eagle, really has no bearing on the national security interests of the United States. And the greatest threat to my liberty and to my freedom is not Vladimir Putin, although I'm disgusted by what he did over the weekend. But it's a nasty war. It's an ugly war. It's been an ugly war for 3 years. To me, the biggest threat to my freedom and liberty comes, exactly as you put it, from the Marxist, radical, communist Democrats that have taken over the deep state, captured the Democratic Party, unleashed a border invasion that may take us generations to undo, with the courts trying to block Trump at every move, and the damage that Biden inflicted on all of us for 4 years. That, to me, is the real threat that we face. That's the true enemy. That's the fifth column. That's the enemy within. Putin is Putin. Putin is a Russian czar. Fundamentally, you want to understand Vladimir Putin. He's just like a traditional Russian czar. They're brutal. They rule with an iron fist. They police their borderlands. And they can be vicious. And if I was a Ukrainian, I wouldn't like them. And if I was a Lithuanian or an Estonian or a Latvian, I'd be very nervous around him. I get it. But that's their part of the world. That's not our part of the world. And, you know, Germany is a very wealthy country. It's one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It's the economic powerhouse of Europe. It's much closer to Germany than it is to us. Why aren't the Germans arming the Ukrainians if they believe that Putin is such a threat? Why aren't the British arming the Ukrainians to the teeth? I know they're sending them some weapons, but I'm talking about really arming them for, $200, $300, $400 billion to fight this thing out against Russia for years and years. They're not. They want us to do the heavy lifting. And then you have that clown in Paris, Macron, who literally got bitch slapped by his own wife. That day, I don't know if you saw that on the plane. I mean, it's a huge scandal in France. They're on this plane. It was in Vietnam. He's doing some kind of a tour. His wife is with him, who, by the way, is twice his age, but let that go. And he doesn't realize the camera's on him. And you can clearly see she shoved him and slapped him in the face. They had some kind of a nasty argument. And basically, this guy, who's the president of France, is getting beaten up by his liberal wife. It's domestic abuse, but the wife is beating up the French president. And then he notices, the camera's on him and it caught him, and he gives that greasy smile. Everything is fine. And to show you what a joke this French leader is, after he's caught on camera, I mean, the camera is the camera is the camera. Okay, the videotape doesn't lie. First, they tried to say the Russians made it up. It was one of these cheap fakes. Then they're like, well, no, it really happened. It was caught. This is not Russian disinformation. Then he came out and said, no, we were just horseplaying. We were just horsing around. Then, no, it's obvious they weren't horsing around. She was furious at him. You had witnesses that said, no, they were fighting. It was an argument. And she's so sick of this guy, she slapped him in the face. Now it's, well, my wife and I had an argument, but that's a personal thing. It's a personal thing? You're on a trip representing your country abroad, and you guys can't keep it together when the plane, they open up the hatch and the stairs are big. There they are. You got a delegation of Vietnamese officials waiting for you, and your wife is literally slapping you silly in the face? I mean, this is the leader of France? This is the guy that's going to stare down Putin? Mr. Tough Guy? I don't think so. So the French aren't going to stop this war. The Brits aren't going to stop this war. The Germans aren't going to stop this war. The Europeans aren't going to stop this war. It's always our freaking problem. Why? Why? Now, it all goes back to Joe Biden. Trump on this is 1,000% correct. This is Biden's war. You pushed for Ukraine to be into NATO. You were told, don't do it. It's a red line. You did it. Then you said, well, if it's a minor incursion, remember that? People forget that. Biden said, well, if it's a minor incursion, maybe we'll let it pass. So now you're basically almost going, wink, wink, go ahead, Vlad. And then you just keep sending Ukraine weapons and weapons and weapons, but never enough to win. Just enough to keep the Ukrainians fighting and dying. While all of your donors, the military-industrial complex, the deep state, they're making money hand over fist. I mean, my God, the warmongers, they made a mint out of this one. And now you've got nearly 1 million dead or wounded. Ukraine will never be the same again. That country is smashed. Eastern Ukraine is finished. And you've got the Russians now who've been driven completely into China's arms. And NATO and the Democrats and the neocons are itching for World War III with Russia. That's why my advice to President Trump is, look, if Putin doesn't want peace, and Zelensky clearly doesn't want peace, walk away. Walk away. Don't give Zelensky another penny in aid. Nothing. Nothing. And Putin did embarrass you, and he had no right to do that. I think what he did was shameful. And say, okay, buddy, you as Trump told him, you're playing with fire. You know, Trump said, you don't want peace. You should have told me this 3 months ago. But you think you're going to put me on a string and play me for an idiot? Okay. Well, you know what now? No oil and no natural gas. Now fight your war. Now let's see how tough you are. And if the Russians and the Ukrainians still want to go at it, guys, go at it. That's your problem. It's not our problem. I think, like, in the end, we Americans have to ask ourselves, you know, we are at a fork in the road. We're at a crossroads. Are we going to be an empire or are we going to be a republic? You can't be both. Rome became an empire and it devoured itself. I want us to be a republic. We take care of our people, our borders, our freedoms, our liberties, our Constitution, ourselves. First and foremost, always ourselves. There's always wars around the world. That's been the truth of history going back since humankind began. There's never been a second in human history where there wasn't a war somewhere. They want us to be the perpetual global cop, the global policeman. And that leads to imperialism. That leads to imperial overstretch. We're 30. I mean, I look at this. I'm looking around the room. Honestly, I'm like, are we all stoned? Like, is everybody high in our own supply? We're $37 trillion in debt. We've got multi-trillion-dollar deficits now as far as the eye can see. We've got 20 million illegal aliens that Biden let in, on top of the 20 million before Biden let the 20 million in. What are we talking about? There's nothing to talk about. We got enough problems to solve here that, frankly, to last us a couple generations. Now, if these idiots want to slaughter themselves into oblivion like the Europeans did in World War I, guys, I don't know what to tell you. You got a death wish? Have a death wish. If you want to jump off the cliff, jump off the cliff. So I think Trump can address the country, and he needs to, and address the world and say, I tried. I did everything I could. I could not have done more. I put my entire prestige and authority of my presidency. I worked my Secretary of State, to the bone. I had Rubio fly all over the world. I had to meet everybody. I had Witkoff. I had Keith Kellogg. I had everybody going back and forth, conferences, peace conferences. Both of you are telling me you want peace. Both of you are preparing for war and killing each other. You don't want peace. Bye. 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 Have a nice life. Bye. And, and he's basically said that on social media. He goes, this wasn't my war. If I was in power, this never would have happened. It wasn't my war. This is Biden's war. And Putin's and Zelensky's, because everybody's a combatant. And he says, look, I'm the one trying to fix the mess. And yet I'm the guy that's being blamed? So let me get this straight. You guys start a massive conflagration. The worst in Europe since World War II. 5,000 soldiers, forget the civilians, just the soldiers. 5,000, both sides, every freaking week. Trump says, I've seen the satellite images. This is slaughter. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm a Russian patriot, I look at Putin, I'm like, you're sacrificing the cream of our youth? You're throwing body after body after body? For what? Half a kilometer? In some place in eastern Ukraine? Are you mad? Like, you got to see the satellite images. It's just bodies everywhere. Or legs missing, arms missing. I mean, this is going to devastate not just Ukraine, but Russia for a generation to come. You think Vietnam was bad for the Russians? This is Vietnam on steroids. For Ukraine, I don't know if they'll ever recover. And Trump's the only guy, to me, he's the hero in this whole saga. He tried, and he tried, and he tried. But there's a certain point where you end up looking like a fool. Like, you've got to take no for an answer. Zelensky is telling you no. Putin is telling you no. Okay. You know, when someone keeps slapping you in the face, the pride of America is at stake. You give him the middle finger, and you walk. Marlene in Waltham. Thanks for holding, Marlene, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Nice to talk to you again. I agree, ditto to George from New Hampshire. Everything except, I'm not sure what he said about sanctions, but I am against the sanctions because it goes against the Russian people. And if we care about the people, we should be looking, okay, how is this going to affect? Because Putin is not going to be affected, really. And then all his allies are going to come and help him. So it's going to affect the Russian people a lot. And I agree with you. President Trump, go national TV, the whole world, and tell them how far you've gone and everything else, and wash your hands, just like you said, and let them fight it. But don't take sides. That's, to me, is taking sides. If you put in sanctions, you're punishing the Russian people. And no, don't take sides and let them fight it or whatever. Putin has seen that little guy didn't want peace. Since the beginning, we all saw that. He didn't want peace. So what is Putin to do? Okay, so
Marlene, let me ask you this. I hear, in other words, strict neutrality, right? Just genuinely be neutral. I hear you. Marlene, let me ask you this, though, just to play devil's advocate. What do you say to the argument? Number one, we've already imposed massive sanctions on Russia. These sanctions would be the kill shot in the sense of, for the war economy, Putin would not get the oil and gas, natural gas revenue, which is what he needs. That's what's sustaining now his entire war. So if you cut off the oil and gas money coming in, he may have 6 months, but that's it. So you've already got sanctions that are really hurting the Russian people. These sanctions would be what's called secondary sanctions that would effectively, you're right, they wouldn't hurt Putin personally or his inner circle, but they would make it almost impossible for him to continue the war. So in other words, it's almost like you're being even-handed. No more weapons to Ukraine. They get nothing. But you weaken Russia's economy or its war economy to the point that Russia just can't continue to attack and rampage and shell and just hammer Ukraine. So you're weakening both sides to the point that eventually, it may take 3 months, it may take 6 months, but eventually they're both going to have to come to the table. What do you say to that argument?
No, do not. Stay neutral. You already helped Ukraine plenty. You sanctioned Russia plenty. Stay neutral. Period. Let them fight it out. If he wants, and what he did, President Trump, okay, that's part of negotiation. He negotiated. He sent his people wherever they had to go and negotiate. Putin this weekend, well, nothing was happening. No, nothing was happening. So he's going full blast. So get this over and done with. Since the little guy doesn't want peace, he doesn't want peace. And he's got all of Europe in his back. Just like you said, where's Germany? Where's the rest? No, stay away, neutral, let them fight it.
Marlene, thank you very much for that call. All right, Marlene says, look, America first, genuinely, truly America first. Stay neutral, just leave. You did your best. Don't sanction Russia any further. We've already helped Ukraine enough. Just walk away. That's it. Don't add any extra sanctions. Just Let them go. If they want to go at it, let them go at it. Agree, disagree. John in Lowell. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Jeff, so many things, because every time someone said something, something else came into my brain. First of all, she slapped Macron because he snorted the last line of coke on the airplane. You do know they were sniffing during a meeting, right? All right, now, Jeff, the narrative. Stop saying Biden. See, they have the narrative. They know how to use the narrative. It wasn't Biden. So it was whoever was behind the scenes. Now, Jeff, what happened first? Did they try to kill Putin first, or did he start bombing first?
Well, you're right. The timeline is very, very important. The Russians say, this is their argument, that they tried to kill Putin first. They tried to assassinate him with these drone attacks on his helicopter, and that's when Putin said, we're going to level Ukraine. The Ukrainians say that the barrage already began, and then they tried to get Putin. John, can you please hang on? I want to come right back to you. So, and remember, in war, the first casualty is truth. So you don't know who's telling the truth and who's lying. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let's go right back to John in Lowell. John, just to set up the point that you made prior to the break about this wasn't Biden's war. Let's not use the left's narrative or terminology. These were the aides or the people, the cabal, the Politburo who was running the country. This was their war. Just to reinforce what you're saying, this is from Eric on Messenger, and I think he nailed it. Jeff, this was the auto pens war. This is why all of these people need to go to jail. The people who were behind Biden's auto pen, every dollar that was sent to Ukraine was authorized by the auto pen. John, let me ask you, now that we're at the situation that we're in, Trump is going to make a decision next 24 to 48 hours. His people listen to this show. Should he pull the proverbial trigger on those additional sanctions on Russia? Should he walk away from the peace talks altogether? Should he arm Ukraine? Many Republicans are telling him, you've got to do a 180. You've got to arm Ukraine now and really take the fight to the Russians. What say you?
If you could be so kind, let me answer that after I say this. Let's go to what this really all is, Jeff, okay? Much like Iraq, Putin doesn't want to become part of the New World Order banking system. Say what you want about him. He's all for his own country. And that's fine. You can't blame a man for that. That's actually a quality, if you ask me. Whether it's a good country or not, you're for your country. So, Jeff, this war was started because he won't get involved. Now, they found a way to pump all the money into Ukraine, steal it all, Jeff, and now they have someone else to go in there and blow the place up and destroy all the evidence. Nice. Now, you just said it yourself. Russia's going to be affected by this for years. So now they put him in his place, okay, which opens up a chance for them to get someone else in that they want, and then they'll join the new bank, the New World Order, Jeff. This isn't too hard to figure. You know, it's just amazing to me how blind we have been the whole way. Here's the other end of it, and Trump is, I'm sure, looking at this, too. If we don't do something, here comes China backing Russia, and yeah, Russia's not going to have the oil and the gas, but if China gets involved, then guess what Russia and China are going to have? All those minerals that we wanted. What to think about, huh, Jeff?
John, let's say, just for the sake of argument, Trump says, I'm putting on the Kuhner report right now. I've got 2 minutes. I'm listening. John in Lowell is on. The president now you have the president's ear. What do I do about this? Putin played me for a fool. At least that's what Trump believes. He's convinced of it now. He told me he wanted peace. I put everything I had behind these peace talks. Now he's escalating and intensifying the war in Ukraine. I've got dead bodies everywhere. Rockets and missiles are flying not just in the capital, Kiev, but in 30 cities. I got Republicans now breathing down my neck saying we've got to hit them hard with these sanctions. We can't, we're not going to stand back and take it anymore. We need to deter Putin and deter him now. What should Trump do? What would you tell him?
I would back off, but with very strong contingencies. And not just that, I would sanction the European Union also, Jeff. So if you're going to sanction Russia, sanction them too, because after Zelensky left that White House meeting with Trump, who did he go to? He went right to the European Union, and they already had a plan in place, and now they're implementing it, Jeff. Zelensky is a clown, literally. Let's not forget this. He was a clown and a so-called actor. Are you telling me for 1 second this guy's making these moves on his own? There's no way, Jeff. So if I were Trump, I'd want to know who's talking to him, who's got his ear, and who's backing this. Because you know what? They're our enemy, Jeff. Not Russia. Them.
Interesting. John, as always, fascinating call. John, thank you very much. Agree, disagree. Let me just read a text message, which I think dovetails really nice with what John was just saying. This is from 603. By the way, you can text us 70470. Jeff, Trump has to be very careful not to be walked into a globalist trap by taking actions against Russia. I always have to look carefully at who it is that wants us to do something in any given situation. If it's a known enemy, for example, the left-wing media, the Democrat Party, the globalist elite, whatever they say to do, do the exact opposite. Whether it be taking the jab, blindly accepting millions of illegal aliens into our country, or cutting off our sons' ding-dongs. In this case, the globalist technocrats, the members of NATO and the European elites, have been chomping at the bit to have a full-scale war with Russia by using America's might and treasure of blood to lead the way. No one would be happier to see us get into a conflict with Russia than these named players, i.e. the European elites and the globalists. For the most part, I believe the wisest course to take would be to just stay the hell out of it. Be ready to assist with peace if necessary, but other than that, it's not our problem. In other words, it's time for America to stay neutral in this war and to walk away. I'm going to take calls on this on the other side of the break, and then I want to pivot. Now's the time to call 617-266-6868. Trump now at a fork in the road. What should he do regarding Putin? What should he do regarding the Russia-Ukraine war? All of your calls. Don't touch that dial. Yo, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, like the sword of Damocles now. Trump and many Republicans now in the Senate are holding these crippling sanctions on Russia's oil and natural gas industry right over Putin's head. Listen now. This is Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, Republican, Oklahoma, on Fox, saying we've already got the sanctions ready to go in the Senate. All Trump has to do is give us the word, and we will drop the hammer on Putin and Russia, and their war economy will grind to a halt. Roll cut 3B, Mike.
Now, talking about the sanctions, Russia right now is selling petroleum products, refined gasoline, and crude oil to China at a 70% rate, meaning 30% off of what the actual going rate is. They're using what we call these ghost fleets to avoid sanctions, to avoid detection, but we know they're going there. Lindsey Graham, myself, and a few other senators led this sanction bill. We have been holding off because President Trump wanted time to negotiate with Russia. Because the negotiations are breaking down, I can see as soon as we're ready to move this bill forward, we'll be able to pass this in the Senate, we'll be able to pass it on the House, and then President Trump will sign it. The sanctions will cripple Russia's economy. You'll see the ruble crash.
The ruble will crash, but more than that, it will drive inflation now in Russia is about 20%. 20%. Okay, that's much higher than we thought inflation was bad under Biden. But we're talking, this is even higher than what we had under Biden. So the inflation of across the board, 20%. So this is eating away at the Russian working class, the middle class. Interest rates are so high. Many businesses now are telling Putin we may have to go under. So there's already tremendous economic pressure. You now impose these, what they're calling them secondary sanctions, but really these are sanctions that are going to really hit oil, natural gas, and they'll be imposed on any other country that buys Russian oil and natural gas. So no one's going to be buying Russian oil and natural gas. Now, the Democrats are going to back this. They have overwhelming support. In the Senate, the Democrats are all for it. And in the House, they're all for it. And you've got a lot of these sort of establishment rhino Republicans, the Lindsey Grahams and so forth, that are itching to hammer the Russian economy, really to smash it to pieces. So this is why Trump keeps telling Putin, do you understand? I'm trying to say, in fact, if you want, I'll read you the post he put up. He said, I have saved you so many times the last couple of months. You don't understand. I could have devastated the Russian economy. I didn't, because I kept saying, you wanted peace. Let's get a peace deal. I don't want to go down this road. This is basically an economic declaration of war. But now you're almost forcing my hand. Jerry on the Cape, thanks for holding, comrade, and welcome. Comrade, how are you, my friend?
I go to the Donbass. Jeff, I'm going to talk to you about Russia and Ukraine in just one moment, but I wanted to mention something that was done behind our backs. 2 weeks ago, Governor Healy, do you know who H.E. Chen Li is?
No.
He's the consul general of the Chinese Communist Party. She had him at the State House. And let me read you. This is a statement she put out very quietly 2 weeks ago. She was grateful for the opportunity to spend time with him and discuss future collaborations. What the hell does that mean? Is she selling us down the river to the Chi-Coms?
I would not put anything beyond her, comrade. That to me is, after everything China did to our country just during COVID alone, and she's fading them at the state. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really is, Jerry. It's unbelievable. But anyway, please, you're on a roll. Keep going, comrade.
Did you know about this, Jeff?
I saw the story a couple of weeks ago, but you refreshed my memory.
Dear Lord, the media has put a total squelch on this right away. There was only maybe one or two people that were talking about it, if any. But, Jeff, something's got to be done. These people, the FBI has to start investigating Maura Healey and Michelle Wu and all these people. These people are hardcore Marxists. They need to be locked up. They shouldn't be at any lever of government whatsoever. I'm going to get into Ukraine and Russia. Jeff, first of all, he's got to ratchet up the sanctions on Russia. And, you mentioned Zelensky stepping down and having new elections. He's not going to step down, Jeff. He's a dictator. He's not going to step down. What needs to happen is he needs to be eliminated. He needs to be eliminated, Jeff. That's the only way we're going to get rid of him is to literally eliminate him. And we can't do it ourselves. The CIA can't do it because it'll get traced right back to us right away. And then Europe will be up in arms. The United Nations will be up in arms. But Zelensky's tied at the hip, too, with Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum. And
he's their guy. Oh, you're dead. Jerry, so you're saying Putin basically, or the Russians need to take him out?
I think the Mossad needs to take him out. I think we need to talk to Bibi Netanyahu and have the Mossad eliminate that little weasel.
So, Jerry, you're saying ratchet up the pressure on Russia, hit them with these sanctions, take out Zelensky, and you'll have peace.
It's away. The war goes away, Jeff. And it's going to take 3 generations for the Ukrainians to bounce back after this. Zelensky sold those people down the river. He's just like the third puppet in a row after Victoria Nuland and Robert Kagan after Obama had them over in 2009. Hey, you know what, Jeff? How would you feel if there was 46 biolabs right on your border? Right on your border.
Oh, I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. And that's another thing. Notice the biolabs are hardly ever mentioned. And one of them now we find out was owned by Hunter Biden. I mean, it's just, you can't make this, I'm telling you, you can't make this stuff up. Jerry, as always, thank you for that call, my friend. Gardner in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Gardner, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Gardner.
I just want to mention, I really agreed, I think, with, her name was Marjorie. She was terrific. So many of your callers are great. And the United States should be neutral here. There's no declared war. The United States was involved in the overthrow of Yanukovych in late 2013, early 2014. There are biolabs with Dick Lugar's name on them that were put in there in the early 2000s after they overthrew Yanukovych once before with the Orange Revolution. And as far as this is concerned, this is the United States is a co-belligerent here. In fact, the attack by Putin was directed against a company called Antonov, which is based in Kiev, and they are working with Boeing to create missiles, the very drones that were used to attack Putin's helicopter. They get money from the United States that the United States withholds through so-called sanctions from Russia, and then they give it to Ukraine to buy services from Boeing. So, a lot of what has been going on in the United States is not just in Ukraine is not just all Joe Biden's fault. Donald Trump, in fact, withdrew the U.S. from the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. He was giving Ukraine weapons up until 2019, and then there was a pause on it.
Gardner, I want you to finish your thought, because I don't want you to think that we're censoring you because you're criticizing Trump, because that's not the case. So, Gardner, please hang on, because I'm up against a hard break. I mean, Mike could have let it go on for another 30 seconds, but no, they don't work like that here. So hang on, Gardner. I'm back in a break. Short while. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I want to go back to Gardner. Gardner was saying that Trump himself is not blameless in all of this. He never should have pulled out of the IMF treaty. He should not have armed Ukraine as he did until 2019. So when Putin invaded, the Ukrainians had a substantial lethal force, and that helped to prolong this conflict and this war. Before I go to Gardner, I just want to read very quickly a message that I got on Messenger from Sharon, and because I think it makes a lot of the points that Gardner is making and almost reinforces what he's saying. Good morning, Jeff. Well, good morning to you, Sharon. Over the weekend, Germany's Chancellor Merz gave Ukraine, quote unquote, permission to strike deep inside Russia using weapons supplied by Germany and the European Union. It seems that those aligned with the globalist agenda continue to drive this war. And this last weekend feels like a coordinated undermining of Trump on the world stage. The EU did not encourage peace talks, yet they consistently show up to incite an escalation. Gardner, bouncing off of what you said, do you think ultimately the Europeans, the globalists, are they trying to set a trap for Trump? Escalate, Putin retaliates, he escalates, and before you know it now, this relationship between Trump and Putin, which could have ended the war, is now in tatters. What say you? Mike, Gardner in New Hampshire.
Yes, I do, and I appreciate what you just read, Jeff. In fact, it's very troubling for me. I have an old friend who used to work for the Obama administration, and I was reporting on the overthrow of Yanukovych in 2013 before they installed the new pro-Nazi, Tjanibok, Ole Tjanibok, and the Sloboda Party, which is the pro-Nazi party, and then they swept into the Donbass in 2014. This guy approached me, and he had left the Obama administration, and he said, "Hey, where are you getting your information on Ukraine?" And I said, "Well, I'm just doing research on it." And he said, "Well, you're right." Because I do a podcast thing, and he says, "Well, you're right, and there's a lot more." And then, of course, we saw the Burisma and all that stuff, and the Europeans have been playing on this for so long, trying to demonize Vladimir Putin. It was that very sort of sentiment that pushed Donald Trump to supply more weapons to Ukraine because of what was happening politically here in the United States, the whole Russia collusion canard, all of that stuff. It's been absolutely destructive to hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine. It has caused higher energy costs for so many people in Europe, even as those Europeans put on more restrictions, and they still get their energy indirectly from Russia through India, which now makes an extra 20% off of those energy exports. If Donald Trump, and by the way, the whole idea of Donald Trump imposing tariffs unilaterally from this 1974 statute, which actually derived from a 1962 statute, is such an offense to the very concept of the Founding Fathers to excuse the Congress shifting over power over tariffs into the executive branch to say, "Oh, just go ahead and do it," and use the term national security is just incredibly offensive to anybody who believes in the separation of powers. And I hope that people will keep this in mind, and I hope that Donald Trump will recognize, hey, you know what? I was actually not informed that while they were negotiating, Zelensky was launching strikes against Vladimir Putin, and I was unaware of that. That was embarrassing when he stood on that tarmac and he was told about that and he didn't know about it. That's not good at all.
Gardner, let me ask you this. If you're advising Trump now, because there's a lot of water under the bridge, and you've pointed that out, would you tell him to just walk away? No sanctions on Russia or no additional sanctions on Russia? Don't give Ukraine another cent in aid. Just walk away. A policy of American neutrality. Would that be your advice to him?
Great, Jeff. And it would be a great lesson, too, because there's actually nothing in the Constitution. There's no declared war. So shipping all these weapons all over the place is farcical. It would be wonderful to see that. It would be great, Jeff. Gardner.
Thank you very much for that call. Okay, before I get to Arthur and Chestnut Hill, this sets it up because Grace is coming on. Dr. Grace will be on at 9:00. And I think this sets it up really well. What Trump now needs to realize is that he's got a much bigger problem on his hands than the war in Ukraine. Horrible, brutal, bloody as it is. His big, beautiful bill is in trouble. And this is tied directly, by the way, to the situation in Ukraine and Russia. Because as he's trying to make peace there, the Republicans in the Senate are literally now about to sabotage his big, beautiful bill that was barely passed by the House. Remember, Speaker Mike Johnson only got it through by one vote, 215 to 214. By the skin of their teeth, he barely got it across the finish line. Well, I want you to listen now to Senator Rick Scott from Florida. Listen now to Senator Rick Scott from Florida. He says he's a hard no. He will not vote for the bill that was passed by Congress. He will vote down Trump's big, beautiful bill. And not only will he vote it down, he says, I'm telling you, there's not 51 votes that it needs to pass. Roll cut 18, Mike.
I think we're all going to fight to make sure we pass a bill that puts us in the process to balance the budget. And we can balance the budget quickly. You balance your budget. Part of it's going to be through this reconciliation bill with the mandatory, and part of it will be through the budget process in September through discretionary spending. But we're going to get this done.
So, Senator, would you say without any changes at its current composition, would you vote no?
Oh, absolutely, I'd vote no. This bill doesn't have it. If they brought it to the floor right now, there's not a chance it'll get the 51 votes it needs. So look. We all know we have to balance the budget. Look, we know that it's getting harder to sell our treasuries. We know interest rates are going up. We want to get interest rates down. We get inflation under control. That means balance the budget.
So Rick Scott says he's a hard no. Senator Ron Johnson, a Tea Party conservative from Wisconsin, says he's a hard no. Senator Rand Paul has said over his dead body, is he going to vote for the bill as is? Why? As you just heard Rick Scott, they say it adds too much to the debt. We're sitting on $37 trillion. They say it adds too much to the deficit, to the debt. They have to cut at least another $3-4 trillion in spending. If not, they're not going to vote for this bill. So, yeah, he's trying to make peace between Russia and Ukraine, but he's got a massive now rebellion within his own party. If they sink his big, beautiful bill, Trump's entire legislative agenda, his tax cuts, his border and mass deportation agenda, all of it will come crashing down. Arthur in Chestnut Hill, thanks for holding, Arthur, and welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, they said that they wouldn't vote for that bill, and they never vote for the bill as it comes to the Senate anyway. And this is usually the blabber and stuff they get to make some noise, and then everything's done behind the scenes anyway, Jeff. So, all that's going on right now isn't what's going to happen, in the next few weeks, because there's too much that's within the bill that they can't allow not to get passed, and that's the tax cuts and a few other things. But aside from that, Jeff, Zelensky has been a corrupt slime ball since the beginning of this. He caused this war. He doesn't want to end the war. Every time things start to look rosy, he turns around and does something to provoke Putin more. And I don't think trying to assassinate him was a move to end the war. I can't stand the sight of him. He's as corrupt as the day is long. He's the attitude of the man. And you think you'd want to do business with a guy like him? I don't think so, Jeff. I mean, he probably held up the minerals deal because he was so used to doing business with Biden that he was probably trying to get some kickback for making the deal, because that's all this guy knows. He was never going to get reelected. That's why he probably canceled elections. And the damage to Ukraine has already been done. The country's devastated, and these people will take generations to recover. Not that they're the greatest people in the world compared, for what they did during World War II to my people. And Trump really stepped in this, and now we have to walk away. I mean, this is would we want Russia to turn around and get involved with us if we were having a problem with Alabama? No, this is their problem, not our problem. This is and we shouldn't have been involved in the first place. And it was all over the fact that they wanted to join NATO, and it didn't have to happen. And all we've done is let Biden brought it to this point, and all the money that we've wasted, and there's no way that anybody's gonna win a war with Russia. They have powerful. China is a very powerful ally. They're not gonna. And they're already giving them troops and aid, and so is Iran and North Korea. And this is the first time I've ever seen in my lifetime that North Korea sent troops to help anybody other than the Korean Peninsula.
That's a great point. Yeah, they sent 10,000 troops, and apparently they fight very hard. I mean, they took casualties, but apparently they fight ferociously. No, look, Arthur, I so agree with you. The specter of World War III, and it's not just, war with Russia, which has the largest nuclear arsenal in the world, but they're backed to the hilt by China and Iran and North Korea. Again, over what? That's what you have to ask yourself. Okay, we're gonna risk a nuclear war. For what? I mean, what, the Donbass? Like, seriously? Has everybody gone, has everybody lost their mind? So, no, Arthur, I'm with you. I think it's time for Trump to say, you know what? I did my best, but it's time to walk away. Arthur, as always, thank you so much for that call. Okay, joining me now, as she always does at this time, Dr. Grace, putting liberals in their place, Grace Vuoto. Full disclosure, she's my better half. Grace, I want to go to you, obviously, on Russia, Ukraine, and Trump. And now this war of words that has erupted between Trump and Vladimir Putin. However, I want to let everybody know you have an absolutely spectacular column. It's called A Big Beautiful Winner, talking about Trump's big beautiful bill. And right on cue, you are warning Trump supporters, MAGA, that Senate Republicans may sabotage Trump's bill completely and just blow it up to smithereens. And that Trump needs to really focus and make sure that this bill gets passed, because that's his entire legislative agenda. So to all of you out there, it's called A Big Beautiful Winner, my bad, by Grace Vuoto. It's a must-read column. Go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, WRKO.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in National ER. Click on columns. All the columns are there. And you'll see it. It's been posted. Sandy posted it maybe about 3 hours ago. Grace, what should Trump do now regarding Putin? He's seriously weighing imposing devastating, crippling sanctions. Should he do it, or should he just do nothing and walk away? What say you?
Listen, I think what we've seen is two presidents who have made big mistakes. Biden made a huge mistake when he emboldened Ukraine and said that Ukraine could possibly join NATO. That set everything in motion. When Trump was elected, he fixed that. And he thought, if I fix that, and if I tell Putin, we understand you, we understand your position, we're going to take that off the table. He thought, if I fix that, then Putin is going to back down. But the big mistake that he made is Putin got a mixed message from the Trump administration. And the mixed message was this: we're going to take NATO off the table. And if we're not able to get peace, we're walking away. What a big mistake it was for Trump and Rubio to say, if we don't get the policy that we want, we're going to walk away. So Putin said, oh, now I'm going to get NATO off the table, but I can grab as much territory as I want in Ukraine because Rubio and Trump are ultimately going to walk away. And so what Trump did wrong is what he always does right in other venues. He says, you're my friend, you're my friend, you're my friend. But at the same time, he exercises maximum leverage. But with Putin, he said, we are friends, we are friends, we are friends. And he removed all the leverage. So now we have Biden made a big mistake and got the war in motion, and Trump made a big mistake by removing all leverage while giving Putin the one thing he wanted, but taking away all the pressure. And that's why we are where we are. When Rubio and Trump said, either we get what we want or we walk away, Putin said, ha, 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 I'm going to get my NATO provision, Ukraine's out of NATO, and I'm going to grab as much as I can until they stop me. So the first thing Trump has to realize is that they've made a big mistake.
What about the sanctions? In other words, the sanctions could really cut Russia and Putin off economically at the knees. And that's what Trump is telling Putin. He says, okay, you want to force my hand? As he told him, you're playing with fire. And once these sanctions are locked and loaded, once they're imposed, your war economy will grind to a halt. And then good luck, buddy, because after 6 months, you got bigger problems in the war in Ukraine. You're going to have your economy collapsing all around you. Is Putin not afraid of that?
Well, no, this is the problem, Jeff, is that Trump himself is sending mixed messages to the world, and the mixed message is he wants to only defend America's interest. He doesn't really want global leadership. He doesn't want to invest American resources into global leadership. He just wants to protect American interests. So Trump has to make a clear decision. What is exactly in America's interest in this war? If he doesn't care that Putin takes more territory in Ukraine, that it doesn't affect America, then just do nothing. Do nothing until America's interests are directly involved. Is that the foreign policy that he wants? So Trump has to stop sending the mixed messages. He wants America first. That's fine. But does he want America first and American leadership, or just America first? Make a decision on that and then stick to it. I think what Trump really wants and what MAGA wants is simply America first. And unless America's interests are directly and immediately involved, do not get involved.
What do you say to the argument, because this is what many Republicans are telling him, that the withdrawal from Afghanistan essentially destroyed Biden's presidency? It was a debacle, and Biden owned it, and his presidency never recovered. Their argument now is, if he pulls the plug on Ukraine, no more foreign aid, no more weapons, no more money, and doesn't do anything against Putin, for example, like these sanctions, and Putin ends up winning the war, Trump will be blamed for losing Ukraine. Trump will have a debacle similar to Biden's in Afghanistan, and his presidency and his legacy will never recover. Is that a concern? Should Trump be worried about that?
I don't think he should be worried about that. He vowed that he would attempt to bring about peace. He has done so. He's got to get off social media when it comes to foreign policy. Social media is useful when you're talking about domestic issues because you want to cut through the fake news out there. But stop insulting foreign leaders on social media. That is a bad idea. Get off social media. Stop doing that. And I would say at this point, he is a president that is going to strictly defend America's interests. Don't signal exactly what you're going to do at any given time. Be a little bit more reserved when it comes to foreign policy. Obviously, he should be engaged. He should try to have meetings, all of this. But don't signal exactly what you're going to do and what your limit is. Just keep your eye on American interests. And if American interests are directly, immediately impacted at any given moment, we get ready to act. And in order to be ready to act, we need our defenses shored, and that's why he's got to focus on making sure we have the money to do whatever we need to do to protect America's interests.
And that goes back to his big, beautiful bill, which, as you brilliantly point out, it makes the tax cuts of 2017, the Trump tax cuts, permanent. It keeps his promise: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. It implements his entire border security mass deportation agenda. It builds the Golden Dome, that will missile defense, and it rebuilds our Navy and our military. We've got 30 seconds. Will the Republicans in the Senate blow it up?
I am really worried that they will. We are on the verge of a huge victory for this country. Mike Johnson delivered. And all the Senate has to do is just say yes. Just approve this. You've got to think about this. What is the alternative? The alternative is that we're going to have a massive tax increase at the end of the year.
Oh, you're right. And that would bring about, as you put it, stagnation and maybe even a recession. And it would hand the Democrats a massive victory, and it would be a massive blow to Trump. Dr. Grace, as always, I appreciate it. We'll talk same time, same place next week. More to come next. 6868 is the number. Okay, again, I just want to stress to everyone out there in Kuhner country, trust me when I tell you this, go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER. Click on columns, and there it is. It's titled A Big, Beautiful Winner by Grace Vuoto. Dr. Grace putting liberals in their place. She backs Trump on this 1,000%. She makes an absolutely brilliant case for the big, beautiful bill. And here's what she points out. And this is why he's got to really focus now domestically. I understand this is a huge issue. Russia, Ukraine, the peace talks, a war potentially escalating and expanding and intensifying. But he's got a rebellion now. And it's not just from the Democrats who are going to vote lockstep against him. He's got major, powerful Republican senators who now are going to blow up his bill. And as she points out rightly, Trump barely got his bill across through the House, passed in the House, one vote, 215 to 214. And as Grace lays out in her column, there's so much in this bill that is good for the United States. It is going to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. It fulfills his key campaign promises: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. I mean, these are middle working class tax cuts that are going to unleash an economic boom. The stock market is going to skyrocket. It is going to put real money in people's pockets. I mean, we're looking now at maybe one of the greatest periods of economic growth in American history. Just that alone. But there's so much more. $12 billion for Border Patrol. It will permanently secure and seal the border, and it will give Tom Homan the manpower he needs to start mass deportations of millions and millions of illegals. So it fulfills everything he promised on the border and immigration and deportation front. On national security, national defense, $175 billion for the Golden Dome, which, by the way, China, Russia, and North Korea are losing their minds over. Don't do it. They're saying it's going to trigger an arms race. Yeah, it's going to trigger an arms race. What Reagan did for Star Wars, SDI, that's what the Golden Dome is going to do for missile defense. It's going to create an impregnable defense system that will protect the United States of America from our worst enemies and adversaries. Plus, it rebuilds our military, but especially our Navy, because we're falling behind China. So what it does is it will keep America safe. It will protect and defend the homeland. It will permanently secure the border. It will enable him to deport potentially all of the illegals that Biden brought in. And it will usher a period of economic expansion, jobs, and it will lower inflation. By the way, it has work requirements for Medicaid. If you're able-bodied young person and you're on Medicaid, you got to work. So it has entitlement reform. It gets rid of a lot of the waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, especially all the illegals on Medicaid. Out. It kicks them all off. Now, there is an Achilles heel in the bill, and Johnson was open about this, Speaker Mike Johnson. It doesn't cut enough. I wish it would cut more. It needs more deficit reduction. But Johnson was clear about this. He goes, I can't get the right. Look, he goes, I'm working with a 2-seat majority. I can't get the rhinos to vote for it if we cut too much spending in the House. It no work. You're going to alienate these people and they're not going to vote for it and Trump's going to get nothing. It doesn't matter. Listen now to Senator Ron Johnson. I played Senator Rick Scott from Florida saying it doesn't have 51 votes. It will never get 51 votes. Listen now to Senator Ron Johnson on CNN with Jake Tapper. Roll cut 15. Mike.
I have, nothing but support for what President Trump is trying to do. I love the way he's acting boldly and swiftly, decisively to fix the enormous messes left by the Biden administration. So, from my standpoint, this is a budget reconciliation process, so we ought to talk about numbers. One of my disappointments with what the House process is about, the only number we ever heard about was $1.5 trillion, which sounds like a lot, but it's only $150 billion per year. And this is put in context of the fact that in 2019 we spent $4.4 trillion. This year we'll spend over $7 trillion. $150 billion on that is basically a rounding error.
So, in other words, it adds too much to the debt bomb, to the deficit. Listen again to Senator Ron Johnson. And he says, I'm not voting for it. No matter what, I'm not voting for it. Roll cut 15A. Mike.
Let me describe the mess. President Obama averaged about $910 billion of deficits per year. President Trump in his first 3 years averaged about 810. Then COVID hit, over $3 trillion in deficit. It should have ended there. We should have immediately returned to a pre-pandemic level spending, but President Biden averaged $1.9 trillion of deficits over his 4 years. And according to CBO, those deficits now average $2.2 trillion over the next 10 years. We'll add $22 trillion. And I'm sorry, the House bill would probably add, I've calculated $4 trillion. You're saying you have these independent analysts saying it's 3.3 to 4 trillion. I agree with that. We have to reduce the deficit. And so we need to focus on spending. So you don't defeat the deep state by funding it.
Now, I'm not saying Ron Johnson, and I'm going to play Rand Paul, one more cut on the other side of the break. I'm not saying they're not making good points. Yes, we should be returning to pre-pandemic levels of spending. They're not asking for the sky. And in theory, he's completely right. How could we be spending $7 trillion now? The budget is $7 trillion when it was $4.4 trillion before the pandemic. I mean, it's insane. But politics is not about the theoretical. Politics is about the possible. And don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You blow this bill up, Trump's entire legislative agenda, and I believe his presidency, goes down. On the great WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, so you've heard Senator Rick Scott. You've heard Senator Ron Johnson. I want you to hear now Senator Rand Paul. There's a lot of Senate Republicans. There's a cabal that are dead set against this bill. They are going to sink it. They're going to vote against it unless there are trillions, and I mean trillions of dollars in spending cuts. Listen now to Senator Rand Paul saying the cuts that were passed in the House are wimpy and anemic, and that Republicans can do better, and they must do better. Roll cut 16, Mike.
The bigger a bill, the more it includes, the more difficult it is to get everybody to agree to things. I supported the tax cuts in 2017. I support making them permanent, so I support that part of the bill. I support spending cuts. I think the cuts currently in the bill are wimpy and anemic, but I still would support the bill, even with wimpy and anemic cuts, if they weren't going to explode the debt. The problem is the math doesn't add up. They're going to explode the debt by, the House says $4 trillion. The Senate's actually been talking about exploding the debt $5 trillion.
Now, 2 quick points, and then I want to go obviously to the phone lines and ask all of you, Kuhner country. Notice when Republicans are in power, suddenly everybody's a fiscal hawk. Have you noticed that? when Trump is president, all of a sudden now, everybody is wanting to be, they want to out-hawk each other when it comes to the budget and fiscal issues. Everybody now is a budget fiscal hawk. Cut trillions. No, not 2 trillion. Cut 3 trillion. No, not cut 3, cut 4. Don't cut 4, cut 5. Now, as Grace lays out, again, points out, I think exquisitely in her column, look at the opposition just to the Doge cuts. Look how much opposition there was to Elon, and we're talking about naked, blatant, fat, bloat, fraud, abuse, waste of taxpayer money. And there was already tremendous opposition. Now, you're going to tell me that you're going to come in now with a butcher's knife and you're going to slash what? Medicare? Medicaid? Entitlements? Across the board, you're going to just start cutting spending left, right, and center? And that this thing is going to pass? It's not going to pass. The rhinos will bolt. The Democrats will demagogue the issue. They will vote against it. And so what's going to happen in the real world? Not in this fantasy that they live in, but in the actual real world. What's going to happen? There won't be the tax cuts being made permanent. There won't be money to finish the wall and seal the border and deport millions and millions of illegals. That's not going to happen. Trump's not going to get his golden dome. We're not going to rebuild our military. I could go on and on. You're not going to get any work requirements in Medicaid. You're not even going to get the illegals kicked off Medicaid, the 1.4 million. So, in other words, you're going to sabotage Trump's presidency. Now, they're trying to make it seem, I understand where they're coming from, that these are deficit hawks. The deficit is under control. We need to get it under control. It's a ticking time bomb. Yeah, where have you guys been for the last decade? That's what I'd like to know. So now, with Trump's presidency on the line, literally on the line, with him now maybe achieving the greatest accomplishment of his entire 2 terms in office, this bill passes. Trust me when I tell you this. The economy will boom. We're talking millions of jobs. Trillions of dollars is going to pour in. You're talking now about a massive wave that's going to lift all boats. Never mind a finally securing the border. Never mind everything, rebuilding our military and our national defense. Never mind actually implementing some of the Doge cuts recommended by Elon. Now, if you're really serious about the debt and the deficit, and I hope Trump comes back with this argument, you can come back and make more rescissions. Pass the bill, let Trump sign it into law, and then you can always come up and pass spending cuts. It's not, now or never. The way they're portraying it is, if we don't cut trillions now, it's over. It's not over. You're not interested in really cutting the debt. I don't believe them, because you've never done it. So why would you suddenly care now? And notice fake Tapper when he has Ron Johnson. Good points there, Ron. See, the libs love this, because now you have Republican infighting. You have Republicans against each other, Republican division, Republicans at each other's throat. They know if the big, beautiful bill gets blown up, Trump's presidency gets blown up. So, to me, I would ring Ron Johnson's phone off the hook, Rand Paul's phone off the hook, Rick Scott's phone off the hook. Pass the damn bill. Seriously, dude, pass the damn bill. Because we're not going to get that wall. We're not going to get a booming economy. We're not going to get tax cuts. We're not going to get no tax on tips and no tax on overtime and no tax on Social Security. And you can kiss the Golden Dome goodbye. And the illegals are still going to be on welfare. And they're still going to be on Medicaid. So you want to take away what is so freaking good in this bill that will do so much for this country, you're going to take that all away for these illusionary cuts that you will never pass in the House. I don't know what these people are smoking. You think the rhinos with a 2-seat majority, you think the rhinos are going to vote for $4 trillion in budget cuts? They could barely swallow $150 billion in cuts. 215 to 214. You think they're going to swallow 5 trillion? No, I think I know where the cocaine in the White House, in Biden's White House, came from. It wasn't for Hunter. It was for these guys in the Senate. So, no, pass the bill as is. Everybody now is a born-again deficit hawk. Only when Trump's in power. Have you noticed that? 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Jim in Florida. Thanks for holding, Jim, and welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Jim?
I'm hanging in. Do you mind if I go back to the Putin?
Yeah, go ahead. It's all on the table, Jim.
Okay, because that's what I was on for. Okay. I'm going to differ with Larry. He was saying that Putin had to, he's got to save face and all that. I don't agree with that. I think he had an exit already. I think the problem was that now that this assassination attempt happened, you got to think, if you're in Russia, think how the Russian people, what they're hearing from their media, and what their citizenry are hearing. I guarantee you, they think that this was staged and done before he, You still there?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, I'm sorry. I heard something.
Yeah, no, it's okay. No, they think this would happen before Putin launched these missile and drone strikes.
Correct.
So, they see it as retaliation for. By the way, it's illegal to try to kill a head of state.
And the key with that is now he has to save face over that. That's what's going on. Because that's a huge deal within politically in Russia. You can't take and plus to Putin's ego.
Jim, can you please hang on? I'm going to take you on the other side. But basically, you're saying, look, in Russia, where politics is a blood sport, if you can't take a shot at the king, that's weakness. And the one thing the Russians will not tolerate is weakness. Putin had to respond. Now that Trump's president, everybody, now we got to cut trillions. Everybody now. This is amazing. Anyway, 9:50 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. Okay, let's go right back to Jim in Florida. Jim, look, you were making a very good point. Frankly, a historically, culturally very sensitive point, and I mean that in a good way, in terms of understanding the Russian psyche, the Russian mind, Russian culture, and how Russians think. And you're saying, look, Jeff, they just tried to assassinate Putin. The Ukrainians did. If you know anything about Russian politics and the Russian people, you don't respond. You look weak. You get destroyed. You get rolled. So Putin almost had no choice but to respond with fire and fury. Am I summing up your position accurately, Jim?
Yeah, yes, you are. And here's the silver lining. Before that happened, this is where I disagree too with Larry. He had enough because look, NATO was really the crux of everything, I think. Pushing NATO into their backyard, and he was able to win that. And that was what Trump put on the table. So he has enough to bring to his people. If that deal had been made politically, Putin wouldn't have been hurt in Russia. He would have held power, and he would have said, "Look, we kept NATO out, and we got the Donbass back." So I think he had enough. This is a dangerous thing that just happened with this whole flare-up. It's very dangerous, but the silver lining is he's kind of overreached. Putin has overreached by doing what he did. He had to do it because of his own country, but it's also made him overreach. So that gives Trump an opportunity, and I think he's doing the right thing. He says, look, you either deal now, we're going to hit you, or we're going to hit you with major sanctions and cripple you economically and make a deal. And in the meantime, Zelensky's got to get his head straight. Otherwise, the biggest problem right now to me seems to be Zelensky. He should, because if he keeps pushing this, then we're back to the Euros trying to draw us in, and Trump's not going to go for that. So.
Oh, and Jim, in the end, who will pay the price? It'll be the Ukrainian people. It won't be Zelensky. You're right. What is he now, worth over $1 billion? I mean, that's how much, at least, that he's stolen, and his cronies around him. So even worst case scenario, Ukraine really loses the war, and his people turn on him. He's just going to leave and go into exile. I mean, he'll be looking over his back, yes, but he's going to have mansions. He's going to have, yachts. He's going to have luxury cars. He's going to be a multi-billionaire. So he's the one that's made out like a bandit. So in the end, you're right. It's going to be more ordinary Ukrainians who are going to be doing the fighting and the dying. And that's why I think Trump really has shown himself to be a man of peace and a man of a big heart. He wants the fighting and the dying to end. And this war is on Zelensky's hands and on Putin's hands. And that's why, for the sake of everybody, it's time for peace. Jim, thank you very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Kathy in Rochester, thanks for holding, Kathy, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
You were talking about President Trump's big, beautiful bill. However, there is a section in there that everyone needs to be aware of, and I'm sure you've seen people talking about this online, and it is Section 43201. And buried in his big, beautiful bill, it's a clause that would ban states from regulating artificial intelligence for 10 years. This is very, very dangerous, and a lot of people who want to protect our First Amendment rights and, prevent us from ever being mandated or having any kind of experimentation done on us without our consensus, you are really afraid of this. And it basically says that no state or political subdivision may enforce any law or regulation regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems during the 10-year period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act. This is so dangerous. People need to look it up. It's Section 43201, subsection C. Karen Kingston, who is someone that I really admire, who has made it her mission as a Christian to expose Pfizer and Big Pharma for all their evil doings during the COVID lockdown, she is out of her mind with this. This is bad, and this is something that, if they make changes to this bill, this is a clause that needs to be removed. So I hope all your listeners...
Oh, Kathy, no, I'm aware of that. I get Karen Kingston. She sends me her Substack work or columns all the time. I think she does marvelous work. Look, I think it's unconstitutional. That provision, I believe, is unconstitutional. And it's also a payoff to big tech. There's no question. The states should be able to regulate AI. They should regulate AI. So this was a big payoff to big tech and to their donors. And you're right. It should be taken out. If they came out and said that, I'd say, oh, amen. I'd be with you 1,000%. But they're going on about $3, $4, $5 trillion in cuts. And I'm like, you're only doing this now to sabotage the bill. You must know that. I don't mean you as in you. I'm talking about Johnson and Rand Paul and all these others. No, it's going to make it impossible to pass in the House, which means then there's going to be no big, beautiful bill. You're going to get nothing. Literally nothing. That's why I'm urging everybody, and this story is not going anywhere, believe me, but ring Ron Johnson's phone off the hook, Rand Paul's phone off the hook, Rick Scott's off the hook, and tell him, pass the big, beautiful bill. Bye-bye.